All right, let's get everything ready to go here. Hey, Julia. Hey, Ashley. Is everything good with the sound? Can you hear me? My unprofessional setup here. Hilarious. Okay, there we go. I think it should be able to pick me up well. Okay, so let's get right into the subject because I got to pick my daughter up from her job at 3:30. Chloe, we are down to we don't have enough vehicles in our house. So we have to play like tag team with um everything. My husband being here at the church, me needing the van, guy had a chiropractor appointment today, so I needed it for that, and then here, and so we had to drop Chloe off, and yeah, it's crazy. Hopefully that'll get remedied soon. But anyways, all right, so I wanted to talk about this subject. I actually had this subject picked out a couple weeks ago, but I had a couple listener topics that I wanted to do, so I went ahead and did those. Got my flyaway hairs here. I'm trying to get under control. There we go. So I did come up with this a couple weeks ago. I can't remember what even spurred the idea, and I'm sure I've done it before in times past, but like I said, I have a lot of new listeners that kind of cycle through listeners. So the newer ones, they often ask me to do repeated ones. And obviously, I'm going to learn more in these different subjects as I'm going. So we live in a world where emotion rules every decision and action. So how can we raise kids who are emotionally mature? This is very important to me as I am all about controlling your emotions, not letting them control you. I see too many women destroying their homes and their kids with their out of control emotions, also destroying their marriages with their out of control emotions. And it proves true for men too, who act like they have zero control over their emotions. Oftentimes with men, it comes out in the form of anger. So to my husband and I, this has been a very important part of our child rearing. If anyone knows my husband, he, even more so than me from the time that we were married, he has always been a firm believer in you controlling your emotions, not letting your emotions control you. And he's actually exhibited to me traits that like I want to aspire more to be like. Because I am a Peter by nature, this having control of my emotions does not come naturally to me. So I've really had to train myself in this area. I've grown so much in the past 2.5 decades of being in the ministry. And especially when you are dealing with people on a day-to-day basis, you have to have this part of your life under control. But more so in any area of life, right? The most successful parents that I have seen have been parents who have had their emotions under control when it comes to raising their kids. So I definitely think that this is a very big, important aspect of raising good kids, of training kids in the right way, of raising them in the right way. And so number one, obviously the most important thing to the whole basis of this, and I feel like the whole basis of almost everything I teach the younger women comes down to you yourself emulating what you want your kids to be. We all hope and aspire that our children are better Christians than us, that our children are better moms than us, better dads than us, better employees than us, better business owners than us, better whatever you name it. I hope Abby's a better piano teacher than I am. You know, we hope that our kids are better than us. Well, if we want to raise children that are better than us, then we need to be the best version of ourselves we can be to our children. And the children see what goes on in the home. The children are going to testify to someday. So your children know you like the back of your hand. They know your weaknesses. They know your strong points. They know the real you. They know the you behind closed doors. And that will eventually come out. So I think the biggest thing that I tell young moms is like, you have to model what you want your kids to possess or model or have or whatever. And I think for a lot of us parents, we're often shocked when we see our weaknesses come out in our kids, right? But oftentimes our weaknesses are magnified in our kids because number one, our kids are a lot younger than us, so they're not going to be as mature as us. Maybe some things that we've overcome in our life, our kids have not yet overcome. So that's going to be very magnified in their own lives. But you need to emulate to your kids the kind of emotions that you want them to have. So you need to control the emotions in your home. And as moms, honestly, we are the biggest thermostat when it comes to what goes on in our home. We tend to, you've heard the phrase, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And there is a little truth in that, because moms are the spiritual atmosphere. A lot of times I believe dads have the biggest part with the spiritual atmosphere, but when it comes to the overall like feel of a home, when it comes to the overall atmosphere in a home, moms are the ones who regulate that. Especially if you're a stay-at-home mom, I'm in the home probably, I'm going to say 95% of my waking hours, I am in the home. My husband's not. It's a very, he sleeps there, obviously, but he is gone by early morning. So he's out of the house by 7 at the latest, most mornings, 6:30, 6:45, 7 o'clock, he's gone. He's out the door. Oftentimes he doesn't get back until, like today, he's running. So he oftentimes doesn't get back till 4, 5. On nights he has podcasts, like Tuesday nights he does podcasts a lot. He's not home till 9. So he's gone the majority of the day. He's there pretty much a few hours in the evening and then to sleep, right? And then one day a week when he's doing yard work, but he's outside the whole time. So I'm the one that controls the atmosphere of the home. If the home is in chaos, if the home is angry, if the home is tense, I am kind of the one that's causing that atmosphere. So moms have a lot of power when it comes to how your home feels. If you have an angry home, more times than not, you're going to raise angry children. If you have a home where everyone's flying off the handle, people are screaming at each other, people are dropping F-bombs at each other, people are cussing at each other, people are calling each other names, you as the parent are doing it, your kids are picking up on it, and they're reiterating what you've said, they're copying what you've said. If you have a home where it's very angry and just you resort to yelling for everything, you're probably going to raise children who also emulate that, because we are our kids' biggest teachers by the way that we live ourselves. Okay, so if you have a peaceful home, you're going to give your kids good memories. And some of my best memories from when I was a kid was or were the times when we would like go on family vacation. Oftentimes you feel like that's when mom is the least stressed, right? Because there's no cooking, there's no homeschooling. It's just kind of fun is had by all. So some of my best memories were actually memories as a kid where around the holidays, like my mom would be taking a nap and the whole house would be peaceful. I was the oldest. So even when I was the oldest, my younger siblings sometimes would take naps with my mom as well. And so it would just be me up. And I remember just watching like Christmas Peanuts, like the Charlie Brown, watching that and just all the lights being on in the house and it being peaceful and calm. And that's like one of my favorite memories. Obviously, my least favorite memories have to do with stress and chaos and getting chewed out, yelled at, whatever. So those are my least. And there's a time and a place where you need to be a little more stern with your children. There's a time and a place maybe where you need to raise your voice a little bit. But if that is the predominant feeling in your home, you might want to switch something up, because oftentimes when you are a yeller, and that's your first resort, right? It's not like your kid's getting ready to cross a dangerous intersection and there's a car coming and you need to get their attention and you're yelling like, whoa, stop. No, if that's just your first resort, pretty soon you're going to have to get more and more. Your decibel is going to have to go up to get their attention, because they're just used to you yelling all the time. So it carries no weight. So you want to be really careful in becoming a yeller and that being your first resort, et cetera, et cetera. So just remember that your kids watch you for cues. Okay. And that could be when it comes to any situation. So they watch how you interact with the outside world. They watch how you handle stressful situations. When you got that flat tire, did you cuss out the tire? Did you just slam the steering wheel? Did you freak out? Did you panic? How did you handle that? Or did you calmly just take it to the side of the road, sit there for a minute, collect your thoughts, and then do what needed to be done? They take their cues based off of how you handle stressful situations. I don't fall into this mindset of I'm raising my kids to 18 and then once they're out of the house, it's their problem and I take no responsibility, because anyone with a brain can look into research, studies where they've researched the effect that a parent's disposition, the effect that a parent has, even from the time that you have a little baby. Okay, so 0 to 5 is one of the most informative times of a child's life. And oftentimes when you take children that have been abused from the time they're 0 to 5, even if they're adopted into a good, loving family, those scars are always there. And that baggage is always there in that child's life. And so I don't ascribe to this philosophy where, once my children are 18, I no longer bear any responsibility for how they turned out. I no longer bear any responsibility for life decisions they make, because oftentimes kids will have battle scars or traumatic things from growing up in certain households. And that is due to just how they were raised, things that were done in the home, the atmosphere of the home, words that were said to them. And we'll talk about how words are powerful a little bit later, but things that their parents did to them, especially in like abuse situations, terrible abuse situations. It takes a lot to really overcome those scars and the mental toil and everything that comes with it. So your kids they're gonna learn a lot from how you deal with things. They're gonna learn a lot with how you deal with people in the outside world. How do you interact with the cashier lady? How do you interact with the guy that cuts you off in traffic? How do you interact with all these different situations? And even how you deal with people being rude or mean to you. They're learning, they're watching you, they're listening, they're picking up on how you are reacting to different situations. And oftentimes they're emulating. I mean, think about all the times with our little girls, right? Where they have their baby dolls. What are they doing when they're playing with those baby dolls? They're doing everything that they've seen you do with their younger siblings, right? They're changing their diapers, they're hugging them, they're rocking them, they're singing to them. Oftentimes they're singing the same songs that you've sang to them. So they are emulating what they have seen you do. And oftentimes in abusive situations as well, people will use dolls and things for younger kids to show where they've been hurt or what has been done to them. And so, it's just a fact that your kids are going to pick up on different things that you do, different ways that you respond, all that. So, have some non-negotiables when it comes to different like emotional things in your home. Okay. So what I'm talking about emotional outbursts. Okay. So they're throwing a fit because they're upset they didn't get something in the store. For us in the McMurtry home, like crying or throwing, not necessarily crying because they got hurt, because obviously kids are going to get hurt and they're going to cry, but crying because they're throwing a fit. They're pitching a fit. Crying or throwing a fit in public was it was a big no-no in our house. So, and mainly because, and this is why, because I had to fight for survival. When I had kids 3 and under, three kids 3 and under, I was the only one. Oftentimes I could either be in my home all day 24/7 and never go anywhere because it was just so overwhelming, or I could teach my kids to behave themselves, to be socially aware and have emotional maturity when it came to going out and being told no and not pitching a fit. Because you've all been in the store and you've seen that kid that gets told no, and it's awkward for everyone around, right? When the kid is just screaming and crying. I've heard kids cussing out their parents in the store before, and obviously those kids learned that from somewhere. They learned that it didn't happen in a vacuum. They definitely learned that from their parents, and so a lot of that lies in the parents too. And then the poor parents are just like, what do I do? And there were many times, I remember one time I was walking into Aldi and the way I would do it is I would put one in the cart, right? You go get the cart, you put one in the seat. Now they have 2-seaters, which is nice, but back then they only had one. So I'd put one in the cart, and then I had one on one side holding on and one on the other side holding on to the cart, and we would walk in. Well, pretty much within the first 2 seconds of being in the store. Tommy or Jason or one of them started pitching a fit. And so I just grabbed the baby out of the cart. I said, hold on to my skirt with one. And I took the one that was throwing the fit by his hand. And we went back out to the van. I dealt with it, and always be in explaining we're not crying. Like, we're going to the store. You're not getting this. And you're not going to cry about it. We're going to go get our grocery shopping done. And, then we're going in, because they're not going to be reasoned with in the middle of it in the store, especially if they're 2 or 3 or whatever. Oftentimes 2 and 3-year-olds won't listen to reasoning. So after that, I walked back in, took the cart that I had just kind of put to the side, put him back in, and then we did our grocery shopping. And I actually had a lady that came up to me and she's like, can I just commend you for just dealing with that so calmly and patiently, taking them out, dealing with the issue and then bringing them back in. She's like, I don't see many moms doing that. And I just want to tell you that really encouraged me. And she was an older lady. And that was really nice because, oftentimes as young moms, we do feel judged, right? Because we really don't know what we're doing. And this is all new to us. And we, kids are embarrassing. They embarrass us in public and all this stuff. So it was just nice hearing an older lady give me encouragement. And that really made my day. Even though it had started out badly, the shopping trip, it all ended up well. And it was fine. Now, when my kids were younger, one of the big things we did was we would not buy them candy. Like, we were dirt poor then. And so my younger ones are a little bit more spoiled now, but we were dirt poor back then. And so we just didn't allow it. And so our kids learned that when mom and dad said no, that meant no, and they couldn't pitch a fit. And as they got older, occasionally when they were really good in the store, we would reward them. So we would buy them a bag of M&Ms or something. And we would tell them, we really felt like you needed this because you were really good in the store and you were listening to mommy really well. So we would do both. We would punish for the clear boundary that was crossed, pitching a fit in the store. But oftentimes we would reward them too when they were exceptionally good and well behaved and listened. And that is how I survived the younger years. I could not have survived if I did not have some clear set. This is a no, this is a yes. So, that was one of the big things that was a non-negotiable for us. Having my children in church their whole lives and around other people all the time, I try, and my kids are not perfect. Do not think my kids are perfect. Everyone at Liberty could tell you my kids are not perfect. They're kids just like their kids. And all of our kids mess up. All of our kids sin. But I want my kids to treat others with kindness. And obviously this gets better as they age. When you're in that 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 category, they can be pretty gnarly and pretty sassy. So, we're still working on it with some, but I do not want my kids to be bullies. And I do believe that having emotional maturity as you're aging comes to not bullying. And I've known a lot of grown adults that are just plain mean bullies. And to me, that shows stunted emotional maturity. They're not emotionally mature when they are bullying everyone around them. They're constantly putting others down. They're calling names. They're, whatever it is. I don't want my kids being bullies. So obviously, the number one thing is I can't be a bully myself. My kids need to see me treating others with respect and kindness. And there's times, I have to be honest, but being kind in that honesty, not going over the top, not calling names, whatever it is. So, how they treat others, that's a big deal to me. And then also how they talk about others. I don't like them being nitpicky about others, oftentimes being harsher on others than they are themselves. I don't like this thing where, it could be with any situation. You're at a party and you go home and you just trash everyone there. You're at a church service and you go home and you just trash anyone there. That's not how I want it. I don't want that at my home. So I'm very picky about how they treat others. I don't want them to be bullied. Also, the way we talk about others. We were at a conference, last week or the week before, I can't remember. And I've had her on the show Jane Kane. She was one of our longtime family friends, like for years, decades, right? And she came up to me and she said, I just want to tell you that, your daughter-in-law is, she's like, I really don't even know them very well, but we got to talk a lot at the conference. And she's like, they were just so sweet and so nice to me. And she's like, it was like a breath of fresh air. And she said, Jack and I got in the car and we were driving away. And I was thinking, the reason that they are that way is because Tommy and Cassandra have convinced them that we're good people, or like they've told them that we're good people, or they talk highly of us, something along those lines. She's like, you guys have talked highly about us, and it reflects in how your daughter-in-law's, their attitude towards us. And I was like, well, of course. I said, we don't have anything bad to say about you. We would never say anything bad about you. I said, only good things. And it's true. Like, we love the Canes. And I want in my home it to be more along the lines of we're talking people up rather than talking people down. And I realize that a lot of that lies on me, how I talk about someone, how I come across as someone. If I have a bad attitude towards someone, my kids are going to pick up on that bad attitude. If I have a good attitude towards someone, my kids are going to pick up that good attitude. So it's very important how you talk about others, and your kids are going to pick up on that. Oftentimes, I can tell that there is stuff going on in the home against my husband and I being in the ministry based off how the kids respond to me or how the kids view me. It's very, very obvious because more is caught than taught. So it doesn't matter if you're nice to my face. I can anytime there's been problems that have been developing with people in the church or getting animosity towards us, their children start acting differently towards me. And that's the first tell. And so then I'm like, oh man, because I know something's probably being said, something's going on. And then, it always comes out later. Yes, there was a lot of animosity there and, hard feelings, and things were growing. And then sadly, by the time that you get to the point where it erupts, it's almost too late to fix that relationship. That's why I'm a firm believer in fixing problems before they get big, fixing problems as they're small, because a lot of time pride hasn't set in, and you haven't put all these, you haven't poisoned the well towards this person in your kids' minds. Because once you poison the well in your kids' minds, it's really hard to going back to being friends or going back to thinking positively about them or whatever. So those are some non-negotiables for me in my house. So show your kids that they have to get through hard days, even when emotional. And for me, I have 6 daughters. So this has been a big one. And my kids will tell you, they're like, Mom, you're not normal. You're not like most women, and you're not normal because, most women, my oldest son, he was a quick learner when it came to this with his wife, Jenna, because she is very emotional. So like me, I might cry once a year. And usually I've had deep, profound loss, such as someone close to me has died, or I'm very angry. And it takes a lot to get me to that point. I cry more for angry tears than anything. And so, my son went from having a mom who he barely ever saw cry to being married to someone that cries almost every day. And so for him, it was woo, it was a big change, and he had to kind of learn how to adapt to that. But he's had sisters that were more emotional than me. I have a couple of daughters that take more after my mother-in-law, who is a more emotional person when it comes to tears and stuff. So, and I guess I see all these reels and memes about husbands and wives, and the husbands are talking about how their wife cries about everything. And I'm just like, that doesn't apply to us. I'm not a crier. And so, yeah, it doesn't apply at all to us. So my boys have had to find that, obviously their wives are going to be different than their mom, and they have to learn to deal with that. But with my girls, I have gotten better about this. When they cry, I'm just for me, personally, I'm just why are you crying? Because for me, crying is over this deep, deep loss. So I'm thinking, you literally just had a bad day, just go to bed. And when you wake up, it'll be fine. That's my personality. but I'm getting better at just trying to let them vent and listen and be sympathetic and not just be like, oh my goodness, why are you crying? Or my kids will say, mom will be like, oh my soul. And I do. I'll be like, oh my soul, what is wrong now? So I'm trying to get better because I do have daughters that have different personalities than I do. And I'm all about not trying to morph my kids into the same personality in the same box because God did give them all different personalities. And so I am trying to be, they're different than me. So I've got to accept that. I have accepted it, but I've got to learn to live with that and help be what they need me to be, I guess. They don't need to be told you're being silly, stop crying. They need to be hugged and told it's all right, it'll be better tomorrow. Go ahead, let it out, cry it out, whatever. So I'm trying to be that for them. But that being said, sometimes they're still going to have to muddle through when they're having a rough day. My girlies that are still in school, they're going to have to get through school. They're going to have to get their chores done. We all have bad days. We all have emotional days. But part of being emotionally mature is realizing I just need to buckle up right now and I need to get through this and I can't quit and I just got to plow through and it'll be better tomorrow. So with my kids, that's what I've really tried to reiterate. Teach them that they can't take out their hormones and their emotional stuff on others. Oftentimes it's not hard to read if someone's having a bad day. They'll come into church or they'll come into the workplace and it's like a storm cloud following them around, right? Oh, right over their head. And you don't have to ask if they're having a bad day. You can tell they're having a bad day and they'll let everyone know they're having a bad day by their huffs and puffs and just, and oftentimes if someone snaps at me or they are what I perceive as rude or curt with me, I will try to give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe they're going through this. Maybe they're, because we all have those days. And some have not learned to just not take it out on others. Some have learned, are letting their emotions of the day carry over into how they're talking with others, how they're responding to others, whatever. So some aren't as emotionally mature in that area as I am. I've had to become this way because I'm a pastor's wife. So I have bad days a lot. When I say bad days, when I say bad days, let me reframe that. It's not bad. They're not bad days. They're busy days. They are crazy days. They are days where I am flying by the seat of my pants or skirt or whatever you want to call it. So they're not bad days, but I have crazy days all the time. And I cannot let that crazy day or the stress of that crazy day, I cannot bring that into church and take that out on other people. That's not fair to them. That's not right of me to do. And so I had to learn a long time ago that even if I have a stressful day, I need to leave that at home. I need to leave it outside the church. Okay. So it's out there. I come into the church and I need to just put it out of my brain. So that's kind of how I do it now. Even if I have a crazy day, it's okay. I'm here in church, all of my fellow church goers, my sisters and brothers in Christ, they didn't experience this, so they don't need to be a part of it. So I've really trained my brain well when it comes to just shutting off stressful things. It's there. I'm here. I'm going to be fully in the moment here, fully, whatever. So obviously we're not all perfect in that. And sometimes you can slip up, but overall, that's what I try to do. Life goes on even with your hormones, and there have been times in the last year where I am just not feeling it. Like I'm having heat flash after heat flash, so much so that I'm nauseous and I want to throw up and I have these migraines but it's not anyone here's fault and I don't need to take it out on them. So I still have to work. It's training me to be in charge of my emotions and even physical stuff sometimes rather than letting it control me. I don't ever want my perimenopause symptoms to control me and how I treat other people. So I have to think. It's like I have to ignore all the physical things going on. And I need to talk calmly and nicely, even through a hot flash, even through a migraine, whatever's going on, I have to just not let it control me. And girls, from the time that they start their cycle, they need to learn that they can't use their hormones as an excuse. Okay. So I can't snap at someone and then just say, oh, I'm sorry, it's that time of the month, because that's not right. That time of the month is now controlling me and my moods and how I'm treating other people. So I don't want that to ever be an excuse. So it's not all right to just fly off the handle at someone and then blame that, so life goes on, even with the hormones, and you need to learn to just work through those and not let them control you. And then even when it comes to boys, you can train your boys to show up to work even when they're off. And my boys are both my oldest. Both of them. Oh my goodness. This week, actually, they're both like working 60 hours. So they're crazy hard workers, and they go even when they've gone, when they've had a fever, they've gone and then they've had to come home because they were throwing up. I mean, they're really, really hard workers. And that was something, obviously, from the time they got a job, we wouldn't let them skip. We wouldn't let them miss just for frivolity or silly things. And their dad was he was like, I'm raising hardworking sons. And he did that. And they are both very, very hardworking. But that was something we did from the time that they got a job. Even if it interfered with something maybe that was fun, we would be like, no, this is your commitment. You already committed to doing this. You're going to do your commitment. So that was another thing we were picky about, was commitments when they were growing up. So another way to raise emotionally mature children is calmly reacting to situations. And I'm not even talking about like your car breaks down, or your tire goes flat, or something else breaks in the house. I'm talking about even different situations that they bring to you. Let's say you're trying to raise your kids to be open and honest with you about things. Well, if and when they come to you about maybe a mistake they made, or something that they want to do that's a little different than what you want them to do, whether that's a job choice, or they want to go to college and you don't, or they don't want to go to college and you want them to go to college, whatever it is, you have to show them that you can communicate well in those situations and that you can handle it calmly, that you can be calm about it. You're not flying off the handle. You're not cussing them out. You're not freaking out at them. You're not yelling at them. You're not throwing things. Because if you're doing that, when they finally opened up to you and talked to you about something in their life, they're going to be more apt. This was not worth it. Like, no one wants to be cussed out. I'm never coming to you again with anything. So you have to, as the parent, you have to be the emotionally calm one. You have to be the emotionally mature one when you're dealing with the situations. And those of you that have little kids have no idea what I'm talking about. But those of you that have older kids, you do know what I'm talking about. Those of you that have teenagers, those of you that have young adults, there's going to be lots of times in life when, if you've raised kids that value your input and you've been very good at communicating with them, there's going to be lots of times they come to you maybe with problems, maybe they messed up, maybe they need guidance. And as long as you've kept that communication line open, they're going to come to you with these things. And that's a good thing. You want that. As a parent, you want your kids coming to you. You don't want your kids sneaking around behind your back. You can have kids that like mark all the boxes from 0 to 18 in your home. Like you have a rule, no rated R movies. And from all appearances, they're following that rule. But in all actuality, they're sneaking behind your back because they're just trying to get away with it. You want kids that are going to be open with you about what they're doing. I would actually rather have a kid be openly defiant to my face than sneak around behind my back and be doing this stuff that they know is not allowed. So I've always tried to keep that communication open with my kids. Obviously, we have non-negotiables we're not going to do in our home. That is one of the things, the rated R, we don't allow our children at home to watch rated R movies. That's one of the things that we have, and they kind of know that. So I would rather them come to me with their problems, and me, even if it's a big problem and I'm shocked, or, you can't fly off the handle. You have to be able to emotionally handle it. And your kids are going to learn a lot from you if you're able to just stay calm and collected and talk through it with them. You have to do that and start from the time that they're little, try to teach them, be talking to your kids all the time. When you rise up, when you go to bed, just talk about everything, the things of the Lord, talk to them about how their day is going, talk to them about how important it is to tell you. I'm really big on my kids not lying. And so we do have stricter consequences if the kids lie versus if they just fess up. I tend to go a lot easier on them if they just fess up and then just tell me. But if I catch them in a lie, it's going to be a lot worse. The punishment is. So yeah, put them in situations where they will need to be emotionally mature. So for the boys, for us, it was when our boys were old enough to work. Just a second, my daughter-in-law just texted me. So I need to respond. I cannot respond and talk at the same time. Okay. For your boys, from the time that they were little, we have not tried to keep them in a bubble. We have instructed them, raised them in the way that they should go, but we knew that they were going to have to be around worldly influences as they grew up. So from the time they were 12, they had a job in the summer. It was just a detasseling job. And we wanted them to have opportunities to prove that they were able to, okay, so for my boys, they were around other kids when they started their detasseling job. So they needed to learn how to say no to things. And so we told them, when they started their job, we were like, there might come a time when a boy wants to tell a dirty joke or gets you to look at something on their phone that's not good for you to see. There's going to be temptations that you're going to have to say no to. And so we instructed them on, you don't have to partake. And if they are telling crude jokes, you don't need to tell a crude joke too. You can walk away. You don't ever need to cuss. And to their credit, my boys were around that a lot, cussing, different things like that from the time that they were 12, and they have been since they worked a job. But those two have a testimony in their jobs of not having the same language as everyone around. And people will often ask them, I noticed you never cuss. Is there a reason for that? And then they'll tell them, yes, I'm a Christian. And they were like, I figured. So their speech gives them away. Okay. Their speech, their work ethic, their character, it gives them away to everyone else in the workplace that these guys are Christians. These guys are different. And so, I do believe that is part of being emotionally mature when you're able to be different from your peers and it doesn't bother you. And so that's one area with all of my girls, they both work at a daycare and they obviously dress differently than most of the other girls that work there. They wear skirts all the time and everyone there knows it's because they're Christians. And so my girls and my boys do tend to stick out in the workplaces, but they're emotionally mature. So it doesn't bother them. It doesn't bother them to be different. It doesn't bother them to stand out. And for my girls too, we've always tried to have them involved in serving opportunities. Obviously, they grew up in church. So anyone that gets my girls is getting a gem. They're getting gems because my girls have, they have a heart for the Lord. They have a heart for their dad and I, but they also have a heart for their church and they've been raised in church. So they know the ins and outs of ministry. They know the ins and outs of dealing with people, dealing with difficult people. They know the ins and outs of even running a baby shower, putting a baby shower together, putting potlucks together, putting Christmas dinners together. So it's going to be very lucky men to get my girls. And we're getting closer and closer to one of them getting taken. But it's going to be very, very lucky men that get my girls because they have always been in serving. They've been raised to serve. And they're very good at it. And they have a servant's heart. So we've always tried to put them in in those things where maybe, even with Chloe at camp, she was in stressful, she had to feed, make food for 250 people and they were on a time crunch and they had to get it served. And, sometimes cakes would fail and you can't just break down and cry about it. You have to just keep going. And so I've really seen a strength come out in her in the last couple of years. And it's all due to just being in high pressure type situations that have been good for her. I want my kids to be in high pressure type situations where they're not going to fall to pieces, where they're going to have emotional maturity, and where they're going to learn to overcome and figure out a solution rather than just fall to pieces and not know what to do. Okay. So I try to find opportunities where they can do that. And then even with the littles, have them work alongside with you, have them wash dishes with you, have them learn to cook with you, have them learn to prepare a meal for you, have all these little opportunities where they can serve alongside you. And then nip things in the bud when it comes to character things that you see or emotional instability. Things like watch for anger reactions if they have a temper. And I've had a couple that have more of a temper than others. But yeah, watch for their angry reactions, deal quickly with those things, make them apologize to others if they hurt them. Right now, this is obviously for Lana on down. Allie doesn't really, Allie's not going to be, once they get to about like, I think 14, 15, they start, it's like they go from like, let's say percentage wise, okay, like 100%, none of us are there, right? So, but maybe I'm like at 75% emotional maturity because I've had almost 45 years to work on it, right? Well, let's say like a 10-year-old has like 10%. I feel like between 10 and 15, it's a huge dramatic increase in emotional maturity. So usually by the time my kids, 10 to 14 seems to be the hardest age for my kids. Sometimes, and I think it's because, especially for girls, which that's what I've had lately. I've already raised the 2 boys, I've raised 2 girls, and now there's 2 girls kind of right there. But they're going into puberty. So from 10 to 14, that's the toughest. That's when just like puberty stuff is hitting them. They're learning to navigate this changing body and these emotions and these hormones. So 10 to 14 to me, raising kids is the hardest age. Well, then I feel like once they hit 14, it's like a long uphill battle. They're 10, they're going up the hill, right? Up the mountain. They hit 14 and it's coasting after that for me personally. Total coasting. No issues, barely any sassing. My kids still are all very opinionated, but barely any sassing. They respect their dad and I. They respect our rules. We've not had a rebellious teenager yet. So, and I think it's because just up until that point, we have really just been going at it gung ho, like, especially me being in the home, I'm talking all the time. Explaining things, the open line of communication, disciplining, training. So it's like a long uphill battle till you get to 14, and then we just kind of coast the rest of the way. So will I have one that comes along that it might be different? Maybe. I still have like 3.5 left to go, something like that. So I might, maybe I'm spoiled babies too much. I don't know. But for me, that's been the experience. 10 to 14 is tough. And then it's like, we're just coasting the rest of the way until they're married. So, yeah, a lot of this comes when they're younger. Watch for anger reactions, make them apologize to others. That's mainly right now, my 4 and 6-year-old. That's like at the peak when they're fighting with their friends. My 4-year-old still hits. She gets angry and throws things. So we're dealing with that. But I do try to deal with it quickly. Keep them by your side if they can't interact well with kids. And sometimes I've had to do that. Like, you're with me the rest of the night. And that's 2 strikes, you're out. You're with me. That way you can keep your eyes on them. You're seeing things firsthand. You're not just going off of other people's accounts. I will say though, you have to be careful because with little kids in church, it's really easy once you have like a kid that's well known to lose their temper in situations. Oftentimes other kids will use that to their advantage. Well, they get their feelings hurt and then they might exaggerate a story or kind of make something up because, Hannah's a well-known rabble rouser or whatever. So, that might be where you need to keep them with you for a little bit just till hurt feelings aren't hurt anymore, even if they've apologized or different things like that. So, always take accounts of kids, don't you kind of got to have a middle ground. Like, you don't ever want to think that your kid wouldn't do something, because our kids will do something. But then you also too don't want to take the opposite, where like you come down super hard on your kids, like for every little infraction. It's always about balance, kind of about being in the middle, like, getting a couple side of the stories, hearing your kid's side of the story, maybe hearing a sibling side of the story, and then the person that was offended or the person they did it against, or if the offense was done to the sibling, getting the siblings, but then also another witness, which would be another little kid that was there in the room or whatever. So you just don't want to go too far on either side. And then watch for outbursts of temper when at home. That's kind of when it's going to come out. Remember, home is the training ground, church is the testing ground. So if you see things coming out at church, you might just need to train a little bit better at home. And I'm taking my own advice there, because I still got a 4-year-old, guys. So I'm still in the middle of this. Let them work through hard things. Don't helicopter parent. I'm all about making my kids more independent and having them figure things out. It does tend to help them be a little bit more emotionally mature as they grow up. Give them a task and have them complete it. If there's tears or frustration, give them another. And that's what I've done with my kids. Okay, you just fell to pieces with that one. We're going to try this again. We're going to reset. Now I'm going to give you this task, because I'm telling you, tears and emotion make chores and tasks so much harder. If they learn to just get it done quickly, do it with a cheerful attitude, it's going to help them in life, because they'll take that into their workplace. And, stay calm and patient when teaching them. Give them difficult tasks at times, but pay attention to their cues. If they're hungry or tired, it's not the time for long training sessions. Okay, just give your kids some grace. You don't like doing stuff when you're exhausted. Mondays, I try to show a little more grace for my kids than any other day, because they've been at church all day on Sunday. They usually don't go home. They don't go to bed till later at night, and they're just worn out. But that being said, make sure your kids are fed and they have enough sleep, because this is one of the biggest contributors to emotional immaturity, is lack of sleep and lack of good food. Kids need good sleep, and they need a schedule. They need routine. They need healthy food. That plays into things so much more. Oftentimes with Hannah, she has an outburst, and she's 4. She still has outbursts sometimes. She's not a full-grown adult yet. So if she has an outburst, I can usually pinpoint it to she's starving. She's hungry. And I don't mean starve, kids starve after 2 hours of not eating. I mean, she just needs a snacky snack, or she just needs a drink of water, or she just needs an apple, or she needs macaroni and cheese, or whatever it is. We all tend to get grouchy, and food kind of tends to be a comfort. So it's the same way with kids. And I've noticed with her, she's like her father, and she gets hangry. So she's a least bit hungry, it throws all of her emotions out of whack. If I give her a snack, I give her an apple, I get her something to eat, something healthy, she straightens up so quickly. Or oftentimes she's very good at regulating herself when it comes to naps. If she's had an outburst, it almost always is due to she's hungry, needs a snack, or she needs a nap. And I'll tell her, okay, I'll give it like 2 times. Okay. And after the second one, I'm like, you need a nap. And she will literally, without complaint, go crawl up into her bed and fall asleep. And it's like she even knows that she needs a nap. So she's really good at that. She doesn't really fight naps when she needs them. And then have expectations, but you better let them know that they're loved. And the biggest, obviously 2 biggest things to raising emotionally mature children. Number 1, you have to show it to them. Number 2, though, they have to know that they're loved. And tell them that you're proud of them. Enjoy your kids. Watch your words. Watch your words. Words can either build your children up, or they can destroy them. There is nothing more powerful than words. If they're at home and it's just constant negativity going into their head. You're stupid, you're worthless, which I cannot imagine any parent telling their children that, but there are parents that do that. You're stupid, you're worthless, you'll never amount to anything. You're so dumb, you're such an idiot, you're retarded. Horrible things being spewed into your kid's head. They're going to grow up with that mindset. And that's all they're going to hear. Anytime they try to accomplish anything in life, they're going to hear that echo of those words that were flung at them. If they're cussed out, they're going to hear that. So words are very, very important. They can build up your children. They can tear them down. Hug them, show them physical affection. Kids need that. I don't care how old they are. I still hug my 23-year-old every time I see him. Every time he leaves, I tell him I love him. I tell him I love him almost every day. I talk on the phone with him. I give my kids hugs all the time. My 18-and-a-half-year-old and my almost 21-year-old fight over who gets to sit by me in church because they like their neck like rubbed and their back, the top of their back scratched. They fight over who sits by me. And they're almost 21 and 18-and-a-half. And things like that are important. They need to know you as loving. They need to know that they're loved. They need to know that mom cares. So that is something McMurtry's do. And then how you train them is how they will be. Duh, right? Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. But a lot of people are ripping that verse out of their Bible. But it's just a promise. How you train them is how they will be. If you're angry and you train them to be angry, that's how they're going to be. If you never apologize, chances are they're not going to apologize. If you are a contentious person, chances are they're going to grow up to be that way. If you're a gossip, chances are they're going to grow up to be that way. If you don't know how to deal with conflict, chances are they're going to grow up to be that way. If you never communicate with your children when they're being raised, they're going to grow up to not communicate with others. Unless they are major cycle breakers, which I have broken some cycles myself with my own children. But I've had to be intentional about it. And I've had to be very mindful of different things in my life, different ways I was raised. I have to be mindful not to do that with my children. And so I would consider myself a cycle breaker. I hope that they can break whatever bad cycles they've been raised in. We always want our kids to be better. But that being said, it's really hard. That's why statistically, if there's an alcoholic father, he raises an alcoholic son. If there's a father that's into drugs, he also raises a son that's into drugs. If there's someone that's into promiscuity and sleeps around, chances are his son's going to be that way. If he smokes, chances are his son's going to smoke. It's hard to break those cycles because you often emulate what you're shown. And then you show them how to be emotionally mature in your marriage. So marriage is also a huge foundation to raising emotionally mature children, because you have to show them how to have disagreements with your spouse without getting nasty. You have to show them how to keep your cool, even with a disagreement. Compliment your spouse. Let them know, for women, let them know that dad is the boss. My kids know everything goes by dad. What dad says goes. Dad's opinions matter. He's not a doofus. He's not dumb. He's the man. So he's the king of the house. Show physical affection to your spouse, but keep private things private. Your kids don't need to know about what goes on in the bedroom. They don't need to be told things. That's weird and disturbing if parents are telling their kids stuff like that. Keep the only ones that should know about private stuff is you and your husband. That's what it's intended for. That's where it needs to stay. And especially your kids don't need to know about any of that. Don't be angry all the time. Don't be angry about your husband. Don't cut him down. Oftentimes, how you talk about your husband is how your kids are going to feel about your husband. Control your tongue when it comes to your husband in disagreements, especially in front of the kids. And then lastly, how do we raise them to be emotionally mature in the wild? When I say the wild, I mean, once they're released, once they're out there, once they're in the world, they should know how to handle conflict by seeing you handle conflict. Teach them to establish boundaries with others. And both of my girls having jobs, this is really shown them where they've had to establish some boundaries, even in maybe being treated unfairly in the workplace, people taking advantage of them. People know that my girls are very easygoing and accommodating. And so oftentimes people will try to take advantage of that. I've told them people will do what you let them do. So I am this way, and I've told my girls this way. If you don't want to do something, you tell that person no. You don't need to be ashamed of saying no. Whether that's if someone asks you to help with something that you don't want to help with. You are not obligated, especially if it's not your idea. If it's someone else's idea and they're trying to recruit you, totally not your idea, you're busy, you don't have time, tell them no. People do what you let them do. People will get away with what you let them get away with. So teach them to treat others with kindness, even while establishing boundaries. You don't have to be mean and nasty. You don't have to put people down. You don't have to call names when you're establishing those boundaries, but you can be firm and kind at the same time. Don't be a bully and don't let them be bullies to other people. Obviously, most bullies are taught that by what they see. So if there's ever a bully in the wild, whether that's the workplace, online, a keyboard warrior, a preacher, if they are bullies, they probably most likely were taught that. Once again, they haven't broken that cycle. So the cycle continues and continues and continues. And then their children are going to have to be very intentional about not also being bullies. And they're going to have to be very intentional about breaking that cycle. They should work well under pressure. They should know how to handle tough things and challenges. And they should know how to interact with others with emotional intelligence. And I think the biggest thing for me and my family has just been working around people all the time in the ministry. So we are kind of forced into learning these things. But for me, this is super important. Like, this is a big part of my life, even with having tons of piano students. You know, I have 40 piano students. I've got all my church friends and brothers and sisters in Christ here. And I don't want to be offense to any of them. I don't want to be a thundercloud to any of them. I don't want to take out my stressful days on any of them. And I want them to treat my children with kindness. So I'm going to treat their children with kindness. I also need to teach my kids to treat others with kindness as well. So this is very, very important, near and dear to my heart. Emotional intelligence is very lacking in today's world. And you have grown people acting like they're two, throwing temper tantrums, calling people names, saying nasty things, being bullies. And the last thing I want is my children to do that. So I'm going to focus on myself first and foremost and not be that way. But I'm also going to teach my children how to have emotional intelligence when it comes to all these things that we've talked about. So it's really important to me. It's really important to raise kind and emotionally mature children. And so far, I'm very happy with them. Very, very happy with them. Very, very pleased, very proud of them. And I just hope it can continue because they're going to be raising my grandkids. So I want the same for my grandkids. And I want the same for your kids. So hopefully take this to heart. I know it's a weird time. I'm changing the times on you guys, and I did not share this in the group. So we had less live listeners than we normally do, but hopefully you can watch it on replay. Get something out of it. Leave a comment, like, share, subscribe if you're not. But even just liking it and leaving a comment definitely helps the algorithm, and it helps it get out more. The ones that are commented on are the ones that get out there more in YouTube land. And I'm constantly having new women find my channel and email me, which thank you for your emails of support. I've gotten a few. Actually, over the last couple of weeks, I've had a lot of women reach out to me. Thank you. That was really nice. Just telling me they watch and telling me they get a lot from it. So I love your emails. I welcome your emails. Sometimes I might go a couple days before I respond, but Mondays and Fridays are normally like my computer days. That's when I kind of catch up on everything. I do the outline, I respond to emails, I send out invoices on Fridays. So I'm on the computer on Monday and Fridays. I don't teach on those days. So if you email me in the middle of the week, it might be Friday or Monday before I respond, but I usually do try to respond to each and every email. So thank you to the ones who have reached out to me in the last couple of weeks. And I've never met you. You're all new to me. But you've told me that you watch the show and you get a lot out of it and you enjoy it. And that means a lot to me. I mean, I'm glad someone can get something. That's why I do this. You know, I'm not just talking to thin air. I do get a couple hundred views on each video. So hopefully about half of you are getting something. Hopefully half of you is like half haters, half ones that actually are trying to get something from from my method. So if it helps one person, I'm happy. So anyways, that's it. So next week, if I do it, it will be early and probably from my home because we're flying to Florida next week, but we're not flying out till 6:30. So I don't think we have to leave here for Chicago until 1 or 2. So if I did do it, it would be in the morning unless I record something with Nicole. But this week we have a conference. So So tune into our conference this week. It's called the Sound Doctrine Conference. It's all about good living, good holy living. Some might deem it boring because there's not going to be any sniping or railing or anything that's going on from the pulpits, but it's going to be all about stuff that we need, like how to be a good parent, how to have sound doctrine in the workplace, how to have sound doctrine in church, just different things. It's like holy living, basically. It's all about what our problems are, which is what real heart preaching is. So tune into that. We have Thursday, I think it's going to be Pastor Obi and Pastor DeVries. And then Friday, I believe it's Pastor Boyle. And we have Pastor Rocky Randall. We were supposed to have Pastor Robinson, Jason Robinson, but he had to back out because things have been crazy. They've been doing this new building thing and he had to fly out, go somewhere. So he had to back out last minute, but we should be getting him around Christmas, I hope. So, and then of course my husband, I think, is on Sunday. But yeah, we have different activities going on Thursday night, Friday morning and Friday night. And Saturday we have soul winning and bowling. And then Sunday, of course, is all day normal church. So it's going to be kind of crazy. So I don't know if we'll get around to filming something this Sunday, but hopefully I can do it Monday morning from home before we fly out to Florida. So when I was talking about a busy life, I was not lying. Our life is so busy. Plus this week I'm still teaching before the conference starts. So it's going to be a fun one. But yeah, tune into that on Liberty Baptist channel if you want to see any of the conference. It should be all really good preaching about just being a good Christian. So I think that would be helpful. But anyways, we will see you guys hopefully next Monday. But until then, go home, stay home if you're at home watching. Love God, love your husband, and love your children, and love them well.